Russia today once again found itself at the center of global attention after a stunning response was broadcast that is already being called unprecedented and even shocking for the international audience. Against the backdrop of loud news from the United States, where Donald Trump is grappling with political difficulties and unexpected arrests linked to the incident surrounding Charlie Kirk and the so-called shooting investigations, Moscow made a move that fundamentally changes the perception of the situation and adds new tension to international relations. First, it's important to look at the broader context. In America, recent weeks have seen the spotlight firmly fixed on Donald Trump, who, after returning to big league politics, has faced a wave of criticism, legal battles, and pressure from opponents. At the same time, the event involving Charlie Kirk, an influential conservative activist and close ally of Trump, became a real bombshell in the media space. Arrests linked to alleged shootings and investigations around his circle have sparked fierce debate. Some call it a politically motivated step. Others point to the seriousness of the accusations. But the fact remains, this scandal struck not only Kirk, but also Trump himself, since every move of his allies is now viewed through the lens of the upcoming election battle. It was precisely at this moment that Russia decided to step into the discussion, and did so publicly and harshly. On official channels and through live broadcasts, Moscow representatives declared that they see what is happening as a crisis of American democracy and called for the United States to reconsider its approach to its own internal problems. This statement was immediately picked up by the media and provoked a wide resonance. Russia didn't just comment, but essentially accused Washington of double standards. While U.S. authorities love to lecture the world on human rights and the rule of law, at home they allow scenarios that look like witch hunts. Particular attention was drawn to the wording used in Russia's response. It was said that the U.S. is losing face before its own citizens, and that any democracy where courts and law enforcement agencies become instruments of political struggle ceases to be a democracy. These words sounded sharp and were perceived as a direct challenge. In the United States, many saw this as interference in their affairs. But on the other hand, Russia was simply voicing what has long been discussed inside America itself. Trump, as always, did not stay silent. At one of his rallies, he directly referenced Russia's reaction, saying that even Moscow understands that injustice is happening in the U.S. With this phrase, he effectively used Russia's words to his advantage, showing his supporters that criticism of the American system comes not only from him, but also from outside observers. His opponents, however, immediately accused him of playing into the Kremlin's hands and deliberately amplifying Russia's position in the global information space. As for Charlie Kirk himself, the situation remains extremely tense. His name has long been tied to the Young Conservatives movement, and he has repeatedly spoken out in support of Trump. But now, with arrests around the shooting incident going public, Kirk has found himself at the center of scandal. According to his supporters, this is a political provocation designed to discredit not just him, but the entire movement standing behind Trump. Critics, however, argue that the evidence is too serious to dismiss as fabricated. Against this backdrop, Russia's reaction looks less like a simple comment and more like a deliberate geopolitical move. Moscow fully understands that America is more divided than ever, and any additional pressure point can amplify internal contradictions. Therefore, Russia's on-camera response can be seen as a signal. While you are busy with your own problems, don't forget that your methods are turning against you. American analysts are already calling this a play to weaken the U.S. from within. After all, if America looks unstable and unjust in the eyes of its own citizens, its international leadership will be undermined. Russia, in turn, gains the chance to show the world that Western values are far from a flawless standard. This is especially important given ongoing events in Europe and the Middle East, where the U.S. is trying to maintain its influence. Interestingly, Russia's reaction came at the very moment Trump found himself in one of his toughest positions. His campaign badly needs new arguments to mobilize supporters, and here Russia's words become an extra card in his hand. Yet this card is dangerous. Openly using Russia's support inside the U.S. is seen as extremely controversial, and for Trump, it could backfire. The international community responded in different ways. In Europe, Russia's statement was received cautiously. Some EU leaders openly said that Moscow has no right to interfere in U.S. domestic affairs, though they added that America's democratic problems are indeed visible. In Asia, the reaction was more reserved. Many there are watching events with interest, believing that weakening the U.S. could benefit them in the long run. Inside Russia, the statement sparked lively discussion on social media. Many commentators noted that the Kremlin is finally seizing the moment to highlight Washington's weaknesses instead of constantly defending itself from Western criticism. There were also harsher remarks. Some said America is getting what it deserves, since for decades the U.S. interfered in other countries' affairs. Now, with its own political structures in crisis, America seems unable to cope without mutual accusations and repression. American media, as expected, reacted strongly. Liberal outlets accused Russia of exploiting the situation for propaganda and stoking tensions. Conservative outlets, however, in some cases, cited Russia's response as proof that a real political crisis is unfolding. This duality only underscores how deeply divided American society has become. It is also important to understand that the Charlie Kirk issue and the arrests around him are not just a criminal case. They represent a symbolic strike against the conservative movement trying to return Trump to the White House. The arrests around the shooting give Trump's opponents a powerful argument. Look, this is what radicalization leads to. Kirk's supporters counter that it's the pressure from liberals and the system that pushes people to extremes. Each side sees only its own evidence and refuses to compromise. Meanwhile, Trump continues to play on these contradictions. He skillfully uses any external reaction, whether Russia's words or criticism from Europe, to argue that his enemies are not just targeting him personally, but threatening American freedom as a whole. This approach helps him solidify his base, but at the same time fuels even greater hostility from his opponents. Ultimately, this entire story is turning into a complex knot, where U.S. domestic conflicts, international games, and information wars intertwine. Russia, by making its public response, has only poured fuel on the fire, reinforcing the impression that the world has entered an era where words spoken on camera can matter as much as actual deeds. Today, it is already clear that the consequences of this situation will be felt for a long time. For Trump, it is both an opportunity and a threat. For Kirk, it is a trial that could either break his career or turn him into a symbol of resistance. For Russia, it's a chance to show the world that the hegemon is far from infallible. And for the entire international community, it is a reminder that the world has become so interconnected that any event in one country instantly reverberates across the global stage.